How's it going, everybody? As most of you have already noticed, we've got an event this week. What's surprising though is that we also got quite a few gameplay changes. I had early access to the event, but our early access certainly did not include any of these changes. We've noticed that, at least the GB vulnerability changes. Ubisoft said that we'd get the previous Breach testing ground changes with the next patch, and that is one part of it. If you've played the testing ground with them on it, you already know it. I also covered it in the video, so I'm not going to talk much about them. Better Guardian buff, increased RAM speed, increased rampart capture speed, less RAM and gate HP, etc, etc. Breach is much faster now, and at least in my opinion it's more fun than what we previously had. It also seems more overall balanced, meaning you don't feel at a disadvantage straight away when the game decides to put you as a defender. Ubisoft's number said that Breach is defender favored, but everyone who played Breach knows that it takes some special skill to lose as an attacker. But yeah, enough of that. I've covered these already in the past and we knew they were coming, so not really that big of a surprise. Let's get to the stuff we didn't know about. The big one, GB vulnerability on all heavies, well almost all, a few combo heavies are exempt, but all neutral heavies first of all had their GB vulnerability increased. All of them are 433 now, and with all of them, I really do mean all of them. The big offenders with just 100 millisecond vulnerability were Conqueror, Centurion, Gladiator, Orochi's top heavy, and Aramusha. No longer are their heavies safe from being guard broken when they attempt to parry. They are now, just like everyone else, susceptible to heavy feint GB. Why increase it to 433 instead of just 400 like we previously had? That has one very specific reason. As you know, the parry window is 200 ms. You can parry early or really late. And if you parried really early, preferably at the very first frame, this meant that the GB of your opponent would still bounce despite your heavy having 400 ms of GB vulnerability. So the extra 33 ms are an attempt to fix that behavior. No longer can you get a successful parry and have a GB bounce. To make a GB bounce, you now need to parry before the actual window, which obviously has its downsides. The other change to GB vulnerability was to combo heavies. These actually followed the same rules as neutral ones, so we had a variety of slow heavies that had 400 ms vulnerability, which makes it a total of 600 ms in between attacks, from the moment your first attack connects until you're no longer vulnerable. They changed the 400 to 100, which now makes the vulnerability between two attacks 300 ms. This change mostly affects characters that are forced to chain into another heavy instead of having the option to chain a light. This is a buff to Lawbringer, for example. After his first top light that he throws out constantly, he can only chain into a heavy, which leaves him open to a GB from an external opponent or if you dodged the light. The patch notes explain this quite well this time. Now that the follow-up heavy also only has this reduced vulnerability, the chances of him being easily guard broken went down. It's still possible, but the timing's much tighter. This also affects things like G stance heavies, for example, as they count as a combo heavy, Highlander offensive stance heavies, and whatever else requires a move beforehand. This also has an effect on punishes. Remember when I sometimes explained that you need to chain to make a specific punish safe? It no longer matters what kind of attack you throw, as the vulnerability on heavies and lights is the same now. But as you can see here, the delay between moves plays another important role. The Bushi can't throw a heavy after a missed kick because you can still GB that. Moving on, back dodge movement changes. Apparently they shifted movement from the beginning to the end of the animation, allowing for GBs to catch. I can show you an example here, but it's impossible to know every single instance this might have affected. Feel free to share if you think something's different now and whether you can catch people consistently now. As I already said so often, distance in this game is extremely hard to test, so we might still see exceptions despite them trying to fix the issue. Next change is in the same vein, landing a GB after a fainted chained heavy. UB gives a lot of numbers here. On multiple characters they changed the knockback of the initial attack and then also made tweaks to the forward momentum of the GB as well as the feint movement itself. In my opinion, the two characters affected by this the most in current gameplay are Valk and JJ. On some of their moves you can see that the attack itself has a ton of forward momentum, but if you feint the attack you pretty much stay in place. The patch notes mention changes for the following characters: Gladiator, Highlander, Lawbringer, Kensei, Nobushi, Shaolin, Shugoki, and Warden. Well, so much for my perception of things, I guess. There are still a lot of mix-ups that can straight up be backdodged on one timing though. And as you saw, this includes JJ. Overall, this change aims to get GBs more reliably and not randomly GB the air because for whatever reason, be it knockback, tracking of the move, or humidity on the map, you just can't reach your opponent. It'll take a few days or probably weeks to have experienced most of the scenarios until we can tell that this actually had a positive effect. But regardless of that, the attempt to fix these issues is a good one. I still GB'd plenty of minions today, so let's look into that one next, UB. Okay, thanks. Knockback reductions affect some out of lock, out of stamina punishes. Previously, people would be pushed out of range. Gladiator and Nobushi are good examples here. Kick and toe stab respectively would have missed before.
You lost Zone A.
Moving on to character specific changes, Warden and Warlord got some buffs. Call it quality of life changes or buffs, all these changes will make for a better experience. Or maybe not if you're on the receiving end. Let's start with Warden, an already really strong dual character, arguably the strongest one we have now. And the main reason for that is his shoulder bash mix-up. And his shoulder bash now costs 12 stamina instead of 20. That is a 40% reduction, just to give you a bigger number to use when you complain about it. Bashes follow the same stamina rules as attacks, so feinting, whiffing and so on, now also cost less. Whether this buff was truly needed, I don't know. I don't play much Warden, but I never thought a Warden should have been able to fit in another shoulder bash before having to stop to regen. Yeah. The other shoulder bash change is that he can no longer chain into it from a throw. No one really did this anyway, so not a big loss. In regards to the forward throw wall splat window, I don't know what they mean with that. I'd need the old build to show the exact difference here. The effect of it was that you can now always get a top heavy on forward throw wall splat, even if you have to change your guard. Other characters have to pay attention to distance or change guard during the GB. Warden doesn't need to watch any of this. Moving on to Warlord, I personally think these are amazing changes. Previously, when you were throwing an out of stamina opponent into a wall, it could happen that you get the splat instead of the knockdown. That was quite frustrating and I'm happy that this was fixed now. They always unbalance your opponent now. The other change puts more control into the player's hands. If you don't hold down the GB button, aka the throw button, while performing a forward or side throw, you can decide to not stun your opponent with the wall splat. If you go for the stun on the wall splat, it stops the stamina regen for a bit though. There isn't a difference in terms of which punish you get, so I can't really see a reason why you wouldn't want the stun and the stamina pulse. But overall, a very good change. Next up, map changes. I'm not going to cover the breach map. I don't play the mode often enough to be able to explain the implications of those. But 3 Dominion maps got changes as well. Citadel Gates A point, aka the gimme of the defender team or home point, whatever term you prefer. To avoid people dropping into traps all the time, they changed the part into a normal ramp but left the drop as well. Regardless of the trap issue, giving capture points more access options or improved ones is always good. The game is plagued by narrow pathways and characters blocking these entrances easily just by having a magic bubble around them that can only be penetrated by unlocking. The ladder on C also got some extra railings. The other map was Temple Garden, specifically Sea Point. The stone bridge from the defender spawn got replaced with a normal bridge and railings were added. The other side entrance from the attacker side also received extra railings. There are still plenty of ledging options, so these shouldn't change the point all that much. These extended routes here though do. Stalling will be considerably harder now. You can't just run around the tree like a monkey and avoid everything. Stalling is an effective and much seen aspect of the game, but if it just consists of abusing obstacles in the environment, then it quickly turns into something really frustrating. The area you can fight in the middle seems bigger now, and hitting the tree will probably happen a little less often now. And last is Shard. For whatever reason we got the spikes on A back, 2 maps were changed for the better, and Shard somehow took a step backwards again. Shard used to be a map played in tournaments, but was scrapped for multiple reasons. Adding these spikes back in isn't helping the map's cause. Ubisoft has shown us that they can implement different kinds of environmentals. We currently have live proof of it in the event game mode. If they really wanted to add something back into it, then why not test these? We already had these spikes there in the past, and people will once again maneuver their fight in that direction. Even if there were not much of an issue of frustration, just to quote the patch notes, they still led to some frustration. What's the reasoning behind adding a little bit of frustration back into the game? That thinking seems really backwards. The point already has 2 instant kill ledges. How's that not enough? Oh well, with 2 for 1 in this patch, better not question it too much. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on whatever else might have changed in this patch. This was a rundown of the big things. Overall, really good changes and once again a step in the right direction. If you find any undocumented ones, please feel free to share. Easiest way to do is in my Discord. Link to it is in the video description. With that said, I hope the video was helpful. Thanks for watching. Laters everybody.